Alright guys, in this video I'm going to go over tips and tricks and suggestions for the persuasive essay that you started last semester. So this is specifically for students who did option number 2 and focused on COVID-19. So as a reminder, here's the first part of the prompt. Explore the concepts of equality versus equity, specifically in relationship to COVID-19. So you know you have to talk about COVID, and you know you have to talk about equality and equity. Choose one prompt. Outline 3 to 5 steps the U.S. needs to take in order to reopen schools or the economy in a way that is equitable to all citizens. Or outline 3 to 5 things the U.S. has done in response to COVID-19 that promoted equity or disregarded it. Here's the biggest error that I'm seeing in these essays. I'm getting a lot of the same essay, which is essentially people need to wear masks and people need to social distance and people need to get vaccinated. If those are the only things that you're talking about, you really need to ask yourself why that hasn't happened yet. So is the problem that the government isn't mandating these things, or is there a problem with people not doing it? And if so, why is that problem existing? So for the first one, outline 3 to 5 steps that need to happen in order for schools or the economy to reopen in a way that is equitable to all citizens. I don't want a thesis statement that's like schools need to keep their environment clean in order to open. Yeah, that's very obvious. We need to go a little bit deeper here, and we need to talk about this idea of equity versus equality and human nature. So what's the problem? And in my opinion, one issue is that people do not trust the government right now, and that needs to be addressed in order for anything to change. So my thesis statement is, in order to reopen schools, actually I'm going to put reopen the economy is actually what this one would be about, in a way that is equitable to all citizens, the government needs to garner trust. So that's my thesis statement. And now I need to explain, here are 3 to 5 steps that the government can do to garner trust. To do this, there will need to be clear laws and guidelines, consideration of minorities, and consistent consequences. So these are the 3 things I'm going to address. Note that I'm not just saying, to do this, people need to wear masks, get vaccinated, and social distance. Right? Because there's a bigger issue here, and in my opinion, that issue is that people don't trust the government and therefore are unwilling to follow the rules. This is going to set me up to persuade people to come together, actually, because a lot of people on both sides are having trust issues. And so hopefully by addressing all 3 of these things, I can look at both of those sides. Now, on this other end, outline 3 to 5 things the U.S. has done in response to COVID-19 that promoted equity or disregarded it. So I want to talk about how it disregarded it, and now I want to think of the overall idea. What happened that proved that our equality or equity was disregarded? The United States government disregarded equity during the COVID-19 pandemic when they did not prioritize the livelihood of all citizens. So when I looked at this, I was like, okay, well, what's the biggest issue of equity here? And I think that a lot of people have something to say about small businesses closing. And I think a lot of people that don't want to social distance or wear a mask, or that want the economy open, it's because they've seen how it's affected small businesses. Now, the other element here is you could talk about the health and safety of individuals, right? You could talk about those who may not be, those who are immunocompromised, and whether or not that their livelihood was taken into consideration, in your opinion. So my roadmap example would be, this can be seen through the mishandling of information at the beginning of the pandemic, the lack of financial funding for small businesses, and the overly politicized actions of people in power. So when we're focusing on not being direct and listening to experts, and not funding people that need funding, and making everything about the election instead of about the pandemic, we're not prioritizing the livelihood. So my paragraph would be about the first part, and then I would tie it back to, by doing this, we neglected to think of this element of the citizens. So, the biggest thing again with this is think outside the box. So, these are my general tips for you. If you are saying that the solution is to wear a mask and social distance, then you need to dig deeper. What is stopping people from doing this? Address that. Some of you guys are going to talk about people feeling stripped of their freedom. Some of you guys are going to talk about people being selfish and like not willing to do something for the sake of others, right? Another thing is address the devil's advocate. So many of you made a lot of claims like everyone needs to get vaccinated in order to go back to school. Okay, well, what do you do? What do you do if they don't? What if you do? People refuse to get vaccinated, which is a huge thing right now. Why are so many people refusing that? What about like the idea of everybody needs to social distance? Okay, but what if they don't? Or what if they're unwilling to? Again, that's a huge thing right now. You're seeing super spreader parties all over the news. So address the devil's advocate. Why are these things still happening? And then the last thing is if you don't use evidence, you don't have an argument. Though your opinions are valid and your feelings are true, you don't have a doctoral degree in public relations. So you need to use evidence in order to prove yourself. The last thing I'm going to throw in there is anytime you use numbers with evidence, so statistics, you should always include the date in which you received that information. So according to an article published on February 2000 whatever, here's a number, because numbers are constantly changing, especially with COVID. Hope this helped. Good luck.